somebody, after somebody's cleared, someone who is well, let's say cleared, that they're not committing any crime, you stop them for speeding, you write them a ticket, they don't have a driver's license, and you can't determine their alienage. And under the Alabama statute, my understanding is y'all can detain him pending his immigration status. How long can we hold him? And is there a certain amount of time, or is it just governed by the Fourth Amendment? How long does ICE, and there's a database, is it not, that y'all submit the name to, and you run it, and it takes anywhere from 10 to, well, the government said it takes, is there 60, and in the argument in the Supreme Court, they say you have to wait in a queue for 60 minutes before your name comes up, and then once they run your name, after the 60 minutes, it takes 10 minutes. Is that about right? Is that how y'all?
Fortunately for us on this side, we've got a Border Patrol agent that's working with us.
Okay.
And he's able to access that kind of quicker or better, but it's kind of ironic. They run it against a database. Well, the database is a database that's previously identified illegals. Otherwise, how do you know they're illegal when you run against a database? It sort of begs that question, because they've already determined that individual is illegal because he's been caught and proved to be illegal previously. If it was a first timer, it wouldn't be in a database, would it? Because he's never been here before.
Right.
So it's sort of the dichotomy you got there. But they're running. We kind of, as Sheriff Mack said, we really follow that Terry stop thing. You know, a reasonable time to keep them as long as we can articulate, or if we're checking with an ICE agent or something like that. But again, most of the instances we have, there's already a reason to arrest them, and when they get to jail, then they'll notify ICE. They'll put a detainer on them, and when we know when they're going to be released from jail, either the charges are dismissed or they serve time or whatever, we're to notify them up to 30 days in advance, or as soon as we know when they'll be released. And then their order to us is, if you don't hear from us, don't hold him for more than 48 hours. Now, also in that order, it says you should get a call back. Call us and let us know. If you don't get a call back within 30 minutes, then call this agent before you release them within 30 minutes. Now, a lot of times at the jail, when they know somebody's illegal, they'll say, would you put them on the phone with us? And they'll have a conversation with the illegal and, I guess, make a determination they're illegal. And then they'll tell our people, okay, we want to go ahead and issue a detainer. So some of them, enforcement by phone, I guess you'd say. But it works.
Right. Are there any violent, you mentioned some cases, are there any violent felon convicts after they've served out their state sentence that ICE refused to take?
Not that I'm aware of. Of course, one of the issues in
or sex offenders or something, it's kind of heinous offense.
They, to my knowledge, they're taking them, but this is kind of the, and I know we've got judges in the room, but this just goes to show you how they somewhat divert the problem. If they're convicted of a felony and a judge sentences them to 10 years in prison, they let the state pay their prison time. They keep them in prison. They're only going to take custody of them. They don't defer that. So that's why a lot of times our judges will either, split the sentence or whatever if they can get that immigration hold, and if immigration will do it. So I think they are deporting those, but once again, it's only after they've been totally adjudicated and totally done their time, whatever time they've been sentenced to in the state system. So I know one guy that we had a rapist in Baldwin County, and I think he was, it ended up coming down to I believe a rape second charge. Judge, I think, gave maybe a 10, 12-year sentence on that, and he did serve about 7 years, and after that 7 years, then they called him up. Department of Corrections, same thing with us, is what Sheriff's saying. They'll notify ICE and say, we're about to release this individual. Do you want him? Yeah, we want him now that he's been in your state, serving the sentence, and we'll now take him and now we'll deport him.
Sheriff Mack, you were relating a story about the rancher who was shot on the Texas border, and you said they crossed the border into Florida to get immunity. Do you mean Mexico, or is it?
I'm sorry, it would have been Mexico.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I just wondered if they came to Florida and there was some kind of special immunity.
No.
That's a different country.
Yeah.
That's
I'm sorry, it was Mexico.
Pretty long trip. Yeah, I thought.
One other issue you may find interesting, kind of I call it a little bit of a sham that happened about 5 years ago. You may recall that ICE or Border Patrol back then trained some Alabama state troopers. Supposedly gave them the federal training and all like that, and they were going to teach them how to do that, and then they could do the thing. I checked into that, and they never, not one time, did they actually, the trooper, handle the case himself, arrest the guy, and deport him. It never happened. And the troopers will tell you that. They will now. But at the time, you may remember Senator Sessions kept asking, how many cases have y'all handled? Because he was big on that. They never went after, we don't have the statistics, we don't have this. They just gave them. But every time, all they could do was turn it over to a federal officer, and then they would process the paperwork. So even giving them 28 troopers or whatever it was at the time, specially trained to help, they didn't want to help, they refused it, and it's all from that, up to the administration.
The troopers tell me that they really can't hold them. They take them and drop them off either at your jail or sometimes drop them off somewhere else. And if they don't have enough of them, the ICE won't come pick them up. Is that right?
It depends. A lot of it goes to the interview process. What the sheriff's referring to is with the 287G program. And this is interesting. I did not know his story. I'll give you mine, and you can see the comparison here. When I first got sheriff, your first year in office, man, you want to make that big boom. You're trying to get new things going. You're trying to make, I'm here to do things. So I said, I'm going to go to this 287G program. That sounds like a good thing. I've got some illegals in my deal. Well, at that time, and I think it's still the case, your ICE and Customs district is actually under the New Orleans field office. That's the field office that you got to go to. So I finally called over there and got in touch with the guy and said, hey, I'm Sheriff Mack in Baldwin County. Yeah, I'm familiar with Baldwin County and all like this. We talked for a little while. I said, man, I want to get involved in this 287G program. He said, Sheriff, do not do it. He said, whatever you do not do it. He said, it is a total waste of your time. And the reason is, under the Alabama law, it's still stipulated there, even with all this going on, we still don't determine the fact. It takes a federal agent to determine the fact of whether you're a legal or an illegal. Okay? That's still under that. Well, what happens is, and I've talked to some of the troopers that participated in this, to go through that whole interview process and everything is about 4 hours. So you're going to spend about 4 hours with that one individual to go through that interview process to make that determination. And then still, just like Sheriff Cochran said, you're relying on the federal database to come back and all those things. So upon his advice, I didn't do it. And now the program, I virtually say I don't know of hardly any troopers that I don't know of any of them still doing it. And the majority of them have either left or retired now that were once certified. So now I can't, it's been years since we've had a trooper in our facility on 287G. They actually had an office in my county. They at one time actually leased the old rest area on 31, which is now owned by the state of Alabama. But that was actually the 287G spot, is what they called it. That's where they would bring them over to. They would set them down, do the interviews and everything, and then bring them to my jail if they wanted the detention. Ride by it now and look at the 7-foot tall grass around it, and you can see how much it's being used.
Any other questions? This is going to fascinate you.
Do y'all have any statistics on how many percentage-wise of the folks that are sent up and there are actually immigration hearings held, or the ones like you said that voluntarily say, I'm illegal?
No mas.
Yeah, that are actually deported. Do y'all get any of that feedback from the feds?
I don't know actual deportation.
No, when we speak to some of them, a lot of them, they just let them sign their sort of bond in New Orleans or something and tell them find your way back to Mexico or whatever. Just let them on their own. And it's kind of
that's what I've heard from some of the guys say.
And see, and somebody says, well, why do they surrender and go back? Because they can get back that easy. That's the thing. The border's not secure. So they're going to take a trip. They're going to go back to Mexico. We have literally, I know of one case that we literally knew. We had a guy back in the county 6 weeks later.
Yeah, they said it's not a crime. I was surprised. It is not a crime under federal law for an illegal, unauthorized alien to be in the country. They consider it a civil removal process. Right. They detain them and they restrict their freedom. The federal government has the authority to, and oftentimes, like I said, they'll issue a summons to appear at their hearing where if they feel that they're a flight risk or they're committed a violent felony or for other grounds. But oftentimes they're just given a summons to come to their hearing where they have a hearing, and if they found that they're, probable cause, I don't know what the standard is, if they found it here illegally, they issue a federal warrant. Right. And that removal, and then they just let them go.
Then they say if they have a finding where they actually find them here illegally, they don't voluntarily go back. Then they've got to find if they go back, they come back again, now they've committed a criminal offense. But you can go back voluntarily a dozen times and you've never committed a criminal offense. Right. So they know that, they even advise them, if you go back voluntarily, this won't be on your record, so to speak. But if we find you as being here illegally, then you've been found kind of guilty, and if you come back again, you now face a federal crime.
Well, do you think that's played any role in what the president said and what the sound clips Matt played, that the numbers of deportations are actually up? Well, certainly if they realize I'm not going to be charged criminally if I voluntarily go back.
It's a good point. They're artificially high.
Yeah.
It's an interesting point, yeah.
Yeah, because we get people, all the time that, most of the time, I mean, we haven't encountered the drug issues, of course, are there, but, most of the ones that we were arresting were misdemeanor offenses. And so that's
DUIs a lot in our court, I know.
Yeah, DUIs, public intox, big one.
Yeah.
Public intox, things of that nature. And then what they would do is they would, just like what Matt said, they would come in, do the interview, and then they would take their information. Well, they bond out on the DUI, they go to court or whatever, they handle that DUI. They just set them up for a deportation hearing, and then only if they don't show up for that hearing, essentially they issue what's equivalent to an alias, and an alias writ, and then then they would go out and pick them up.
Very interesting. Any other questions? Well, please join me in thanking both our sheriffs.